to see you. We'll jump right in, and just U.S. Bank has been very supportive of our work, so I want to thank them for their help. And they mentioned David Doy. He's been just a remarkable partner on the South Side. It's just a true leader, so it's good continuity here. So we're part of an organization called Chicago CRED. We're trying to achieve a transformative reduction in gun violence here in Chicago. Our goal is an 80% reduction. Chicago, for those who don't know, is 6 times more violent than New York, is 3 to 4 times more violent than LA. Every year we have more homicides in either city. Some years it's more than those two combined. We are the absolute outlier. It doesn't make any sense, and it's completely unfair to our children and families on the south and west sides of Chicago. I'll give you a couple data points to talk about the work. We have 15 neighborhoods that produce about 80% of the violence. In the neighborhoods where we work, North Lawndale on the west side, Rose and Pullman, West Pullman on the south side, if you commit homicide, that has a 9 to 11% arrest rate. So that means you have an 89 to 91% chance of getting away with homicide. Literally, if you just shoot someone and don't kill them, none of that ever gets solved. So sometimes people think we're anti-police. We are far from anti-police. I am personally anti-police ineffectiveness. And we spend a lot of time trying to stop retaliation, because when you don't have justice in the criminal justice system, you go to street justice, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We started 7.5 years ago with one group of 25 guys. David gave us a space, empty room in his bank. We now have 8 sites across the city, 3 on the west side. Billy Moore runs one of our sites on the west side. Juju works with him. 4 on the south side, an employment and training center. There are 5 pillars to our work. We have a street outreach team that does our recruitment and brings guys into our program. When folks come in, everyone has a life coach. Juju's one of our life coaches now. We always say experience is the best teacher, but it doesn't have to be your own experience. You can learn from others. We have a clinical team. Everyone has their own clinician, and helping people heal from trauma is arguably the most important thing we do. We have educational tutors. We've had lots of folks get their high school diplomas. Some go to college. Billy's actually a pretty recent college graduate. Please give him a round of applause for that. That's huge. Juju just got his associate's degree. Please give him a huge round of applause. And then we have job developers. Our men and women spend a year to 18 months with us, and then we spin them off into the legal economy, trying to give them a pathway out of the streets. Our data, there's a lot of heart to our work, but we really try and track the data. We're showing for folks that complete our program a 73% reduction versus the others not in the program in violent arrests. The neighborhoods where we're working are getting safer more than twice as fast as the rest of the city. So some of Chicago's most violent neighborhoods are actually helping to bring down violence in Chicago, but we have a long way to go, and we're now actively trying to scale this work. We have about 24 fantastic partners across the city to do this. We're trying to scale to the other 15 neighborhoods and see if we can do something special here in the city. So I'll stop there and jump in, and I talked about, unfortunately, the constant need to try and stop retaliation. That's a constant theme in our work. And to stop retaliation, you have to both give forgiveness and also ask for forgiveness, and both of those are equally difficult. And Billy, that's been, unfortunately, a huge part of your life. And sort of, if you can give folks a sense of how you have to ask, or why you have to ask for forgiveness, and how do you also give forgiveness for some things that may seem unforgivable.
I think forgiveness kind of defines humility. And when you think about people and their mistakes, we make mistakes. And sometimes these mistakes may be tragic, right? But sometimes people tend to define people by their mistakes. I know for me, myself, at 16 years old, I committed a real tragic mistake. And for the most part, people saw me based off that mistake. And all I wanted people to do was just forgive me, because I made a mistake, right? And I think I was really challenged myself in that own theory, because in 2017, my only son was murdered, right? Shot 16 times. And I think that I had to realize, because of the cycle of ignorance that I was caught up in, that led me to make the mistake that I made, and so many people tried to define me by, I had to instantly in my heart forgive the people responsible for killing my son. I couldn't see them beyond the ignorance that led them to do what they did, because people refused to see me only based off the ignorance that I was caught up in. So I think you know, forgiveness is very important. You can't expect to be forgiven if you don't extend forgiveness, right? And I think sometimes we're challenged the greatest way to really test that theory. And for me, it was the loss of my son. And, you know, the work that I was doing, working with young men who were caught up in that same cycle of ignorance that I was once caught up in, you know, we're trying to prevent this from happening, right? So why would I want to, you know, refuse to extend that forgiveness? What I would like to do is try to help more young men so they don't continue in this cycle of ignorance, that's costing so many young men their lives, right? And if you don't, you know, a lot of guys go to prison for the rest of their life, you know, because of this ignorance. If I had the opportunity to work with those young men who took the life of my son, you know, I would do that, because didn't nobody want to really work with me and try to really find out what was going on with me and try to help me. So forgiveness is very important.
And I'll just say the lessons we learn in this work every day are unbelievably powerful and profound and humbling. And I remember like yesterday when Billy lost his son, him saying if the young men who killed his son came into our program, he would mentor them and lead them. And that just sort of blew me away. I try to think if I lost my son or daughter, would I have the heart and the ability to do that? And so the lessons that I've learned are unreal. We do a lot of work at the individual, like individual transformation is core to our work, and Juju's a great example of that, but that's one piece of it. If we're trying to have neighborhood violence suppression, we have to have non-aggression agreements and peace treaties between groups that are at war with each other. If you can take a second, walk this room through what a non-aggression agreement is, what a peace treaty is, and why you're pushing so hard for us to do a lot more of that going forward.
So working in the North Lawndale community, we have several groups of young men, or cliques, that identify themselves as in direct opposition to themselves, right? And in order for us to really have community level suppression of violence, we have to work with these groups. And sometimes these groups, they don't really have nothing going on for themselves, so we bring them into programming. But to understand what our programming is about, helping them find some form of peace, we want them to buy into what's called non-aggression agreements, which means you have to be not preemptive, but basically defensive. So we bring them into our program. We work around 5 core services: healthy relationships, substance abuse, financial literacy, AmeriCAN, which is a curriculum where we take on personal responsibility for our actions, and substance abuse. Within this program, these guys get paid stipends, right? We also want to work with young men who aren't in our program from a mobile standpoint that's in the community. So we get these guys to basically fall back in what's called playing defense against those who they consider their opposition. If we can get them to agree to non-aggression agreements for maybe 90 days, 60 days, then we work towards peace treaties, right? Because our main goal is to get the community to feel safer. These guys want to live. They don't want to have to come outside their house always looking over their shoulders, right? So we want to be in the middle of that. And this past Memorial Day, for the first time on the west side, we have 3 hubs that's operating with probably about 18 groups of individual cliques. We decided to use the Memorial Day trip, which we take our guys out of town every year, to Washington, D.C. And we had based this trip around non-aggression agreements amongst these 3 hubs. And overall, it was successful, right? Young men gonna be young men, but overall, I feel like we made history this past weekend. We take these guys out so that they don't get caught up in what takes place in the city. It was a real violent weekend, but I feel good about that. I know we're gonna continue to do that, and hopefully, you know, you'll see the effects as it plays out in the data throughout these communities that we work in.
These guys work in North Lawndale, just in one neighborhood. There are right now 33 different cliques. It's not one gang or 2 gangs, it's 33 different groups, and it's constantly morphing and changing. So putting in place those agreements so that our guys can not just benefit or gain while they're with us, but go home and be safe at home and not living in a war zone, that's critically important. Juju, for folks that may not know Englewood, may not know like what it's like to grow up in Englewood, give a little sense what that was like for you.
Yeah, so I grew up in a household, a single parent household, but it was like I grew up with all my family members too at the same time. So, but I didn't have a father figure role model at that time. So in that household, I'm seeing domestic abuse every day. So I'm seeing social abuse, I'm seeing sexually abuse, things like all type of stuff that can traumatize me as I grow older. And then outside, I walk outside the house, it's killing, shooting. My best friend got killed. Then another closest friend got killed and another one. So this all I'm seeing every day. But at the same time, all I see is the guys with the nice cars. You know what they doing something negative with the nice car. So I'm wanting to be like them. But at the same time, I'm not even knowing that I'm looking for a family, because I'm in the house, yeah. If you on the outside looking in, of course, he with his family all the time. He grew up with his family, but I'm not even knowing on the inside. I'm searching, I'm looking for that father figure that I always wanted. And my brother was trying to give me that, but my brother only 3.5 years older than me. So how could he possibly give me that? So I'm taking those little things, but long story short, I ended up being arrested. I got arrested a few times while I was a teenager, then I was arrested once, and I went to prison for 9 years. So when I got out of prison, I was introduced to CRED about a year or two down the line, and how I got involved with CRED, I was shot, and when I had got shot, like it really did something to me, because I knew I can get took away from my son, because I had a son when I got out of prison, and when I got shot, I lift my hand up, and then if I didn't lift my hand up, I would have got shot in the face. So that's really what stopped me from dying. And so I started looking at that, and I wanted to do some of this type of work, and I got in contact with my old outreach worker from another program I was in before CRED, and his name was Anthony Spencer, and he got me into CRED. And then it's like, when I got to CRED, I found that family I was looking for. So I like to call, that's like my life before Billy, or life before Arne, or something like that. And when I found my family, CRED, they just took me in, and they did everything they needed to do, like as far as showing up for court, helping me out with any legal problems, and they do this class called CBI, Cognitive Behavior Intervention, where they was teaching me how to act and understand why I act a certain way, and just let me understand my emotions. And I'm not even knowing, because I was taught not to show my emotions, so I never was able to understand my emotions. So when I started to understand and figure out, like, oh, so that's why I was showed to show aggressive. I was showed to show aggression in these type of situations. So when I started to understand that, I found myself wanting to walk like and talk like Billy and Javon, and I just wanted to carry myself like how he carried himself throughout the day. Not saying that he didn't have any problems, but from what I seen, I never seen him get aggressive with nobody or show his emotions and release it, because he wanted to present himself a certain way towards me, and I seen that, and I took that, and I just was using that in my everyday life, and I started to realize that's what this program about. See, and if you catching on to it, I was a participant in the program, and now I work for them. So that's the thing. So like when I started picking up on all that, and they were showing me like, man, we here for you and we got you. That's what did it for me.
This is a short segment, so we're almost out of time, unfortunately. But Bill, if you could just quickly, and Juju as well, for folks that don't understand the young men and women we work with on the South and West Sides, what do you want them to understand what their lives are like?
Just don't see these guys as being social liabilities. Just like the panel before us, if you invest in them, you know, you give them an opportunity and access so that they don't have to continue to survive in circumstances that people just basically left them in to survive in. You know, if you want to be a part of helping us, you know, don't be so quick to judge if you're not willing to help.
Juju?
Yeah. What I want you guys to see is that a lot of us trying, we just can't get out that rabbit hole that we dug so deep in. And sometimes it's not really our fault, but we not able to identify why we was in this hole, because we didn't ask to be in this world, or we didn't ask for our circumstances. Like, I didn't ask to be in that neighborhood I grew up in. I was brought into that neighborhood. So it's a lot of guys, and we trying to get out that rabbit hole.
I'll just close with two thoughts. That one, people often say it's great you're giving people a second chance. I think in many cases, not all, maybe even Juju's, we're given a first chance, that every structure in their lives, families, schools, church, community, didn't work, and we're just giving them a first chance, and so many are taking advantage of it. And the second thing is, for us to solve these problems, we need those closest to the problems to solve it. So Juju was caught in cycles of violence, Billy was caught in cycles of violence. They are literally the best people, the best talent to lead Chicago to a very different place. And this is the hardest work I've ever done. I always say it's the most heartbreaking, but it's also the most inspiring. I'm convinced 5 years from now, our city is going to be a very different place. Thank you so much for having us.